Oh, bonjour mes amis. Please, excuse my French, but you know what they say, when in Rome. But anyway, I'm delighted that you happened to find me here on this sunny Parisian street as I enjoy a refreshing Parisian treat. In fact, I was just thinking about you. Well, I should say that I was thinking about ice cream, and then you showed up and that got me thinking about you and wondering what you were doing here in Paris. Definitely the real Paris, but look at me getting all distracted. How gauche. Please, pull up a seat and I'll tell you about a delicious idea that I've just had. Okay, so as a fellow visitor to Paris, I'm sure you've enjoyed an eclair or two. I know that I have. And you might already be seeing where I'm headed with this, but what if instead of filling that eclair with a crème pâtisserie, you filled it with a frozen crème anglaise? That's right, an ice cream eclair. Imagine that. I think, in fact, that we should get right to making them, no? We'll begin by filling a bowl with 1 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and a half teaspoon of salt, and then agitating all those white particles until they're evenly distributed. Then we'll bring 1 cup of water to a simmer in a saucier, and then add 6 tablespoons of butter until we have boiling water and a melted butter slick. Also, and this is really neither here nor there, but since we are here in Paris, and because I don't really think that everyone is as cosmopolitan as I've heard some people complain before on the internet that cup measures can be confusing because they've got cupboards full of cups of different sizes. Well, let me assure you that a cup is in fact a standard measure of unit equivalent to 8 fluid ounces, and a tablespoon is also a standardized measure equivalent to 1/16 of a cup. So no, people aren't using radically different measures when they're using cups and tablespoons, and besides, the people in my neck of the mountains tend to have measuring cups more often than they have good kitchen scales. So even though measuring by mass is the correct way to do it, cups can be more accessible. So now, back to the show. Once our bubbling stew of immiscible fluids is roiling away, it's time to dump in the dry stuff and stir like our desserts depended on it until the ball of dough starts leaving its residue all over the bottom of the pot. Then we'll take it off the heat. At this point, the dough is hot enough to cook us a lovely omelette du fromage, but we don't want that. So we'll stir it around, letting it cool while we watch the steam escape, and then add 4 large oeufs, one at a time. That is, stirring thoroughly between each of the eggs. Our final goal is a gluey, pipeable cobbler's paste, which we'll deposit into a piping bag fitted with a big ol' star nozzle, like think Beetlejuice big. And then we'll pipe out some eclair-shaped lumps of dough onto a parchment-lined baking sheet and hide them in a 425-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. By the end, we're looking for puffy and well-browned. After that, turn off the heat and leave them in there for 5 minutes or so with the oven door slightly open. Okay, but enough of that. Let's talk about the ice cream. Full disclosure, it doesn't matter what kind of ice cream you make. Do whatever you want. But today I'm making David Leibovitz's French-style chocolate ice cream because it's a chocolate ice cream I actually like, and because it's French-style, and of course theming is everything. And to do it, we'll need the following foodstuffs: 2 cups of heavy cream, 3 tablespoons of unsweetened Dutch processed cocoa powder, 5 ounces of bittersweet chocolate, a cup of whole milk, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, a pinch of salt, 5 egg yolks, and a half teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now this recipe is très fun, and it begins by combining 1 cup of the cream with the cocoa powder in a saucier and bringing it to a boil, and then holding it there at the boil for a couple of minutes. Then we'll pour our fervid mixture over our chopped or chipped dark chocolate, letting the heat settle in and relax that chocolate into a melty goo. Give it a good stir, add the remaining cream, and set that luxurious ganache aside. While the ganache reflects on its new identity, return your filthy saucepan to the stove, this time full of the milk and sugar, and you guessed it, it's egg tempering time. So we'll heat the milk and sugar to steaming, drizzle it into the egg yolks, and then reintroduce the eggy mix to the milky one, heating over low heat until it all thickens. Strain the thickened egg mix into the ganache, add the vanilla, stir, 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 and put it in the fridge to chill. Now, I regret to inform you that I suffered an irrecoverable loss during my very bon voyage overseas. Something terrible happened, and I seem to have lost all of the footage of the most exciting parts of this process. But I don't think that's anything to fret over. Thanks to the marvels of modern technology, we now have the capacity to recreate all of the footage that was unfortunately lost. So please join me as we return to our high quality and even higher budget forensic reconstruction of the assembly of these eclairs. We'll begin with the churning of the chocolate ice cream, and of course it really is as simple as pouring it into the churn and letting it whirl. And it will look something like this, though of course probably less realistic than what we're able to display here. Now usually the post-churning step would be to package up your ice cream and put it in the freezer overnight to firm up. But of course that would make it impossible to pipe, so don't do that this time. Instead, you'll fit a piping bag with a needly injector tip, in fact much like this one, and then proceed to fill that piping bag with your milkshake consistency ice cream. From there, all you need to do is inject your fresh ice cream into your little oblong shoe buns. Now, of course, I wish that we could show you actual footage, but we can also take some time to appreciate the artisanship of this high-quality reconstruction. And as another bonus, when I was piping these for real, I found it to be outrageously difficult, and I thought I'd made a terrible mistake in the process somewhere. I was squeezing with all my strength, trembling, ice cream was coming out the opposite end of the bag. Everything was going wrong. But as it turns out, when I was finished filling the eclairs and I disassembled the bag, I found an unmelted chunk of chocolate in the end of my injector tip. Luckily, all of that footage was lost, so you'll never have to see or know about my oh-so-maladroit faux pas. If nothing else, I suppose we can just take it as a lesson that you should always strain your ice cream before churning it. C'est la vie. But anyhow, once you have the eclairs filled, you'll want to hide them again, but this time in the freezer. And that leads us to the next day, tasting day. Well, maybe at least a few hours before tasting day, because who wants to eat an eclair that isn't covered in a delectable chocolate glaze? Well, not me, so I made one thanks to Judy Rosenberg and her incomparable cookbook. That means melting a 1/4 cup of cream, a teaspoon and a half of sugar, a teaspoon and a half of butter, and 4 ounces of bittersweet chocolate all together and stirring them into a smooth glaze. And with that, we're ready to dip, re-chill, and serve. And here's the final product. Now, I'll be very sincere and honest with you, which I think I've shown during our time together today that such sincerity is something for which I have quite a penchant. But there's really not much to say about the tasting. Mostly because so much of it depends upon the kind of ice cream you pipe in there. But it is awfully fun, and I might add immeasurably elegant to serve up a plate of ice cream eclairs. It's like an ice cream cone that went to the cordon bleu, or a frozen cream puff with just a little bit more self-respect. So I suppose that's where we'll conclude our rendezvous for today, but these little guys really are the ice creme de la ice creme, and they're as versatile as your imagination. But whatever you end up doing with them, I'm sure they'll leave you speechless, except maybe to say, "Oh, très bien!" So give them a try if you want, or don't. At the very least, you might want to get home from your trip to Paris first. It's been a lovely time, but I know I'm also really looking forward to getting back to the old creamery myself. With that then, I'll just say mucho merci for watching, and until next time, buon appetito!